Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, let's take a journey through the very foundation of India, its structure and its physiography. We're going to be looking at this through the lens of the NCERT curriculum to really understand the incredible physical landscape that makes up the subcontinent. So, let's dive right in.
Think about it, right? How is it possible that one single country has some of the world's highest, youngest mountains and, at the same time, one of the planet's oldest landmasses? Well, that's exactly the puzzle we're going to piece together today.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with India's ancient origin story. Then we'll travel through its major physical regions, from the mountains down to the sea. And finally, we'll connect all the dots to see how this incredible geography shapes the India we know today.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the India we see on a map today, we've got to go way, way back. We're talking millions of years. India's story actually begins with an incredible journey of a massive piece of land drifting across the ancient oceans.
It all kicked off with the supercontinent called Gondwana. The piece of land that would one day become India broke off and started this super slow but unstoppable trip northward. But here's where it gets really dramatic: the collision. I want you to imagine a car hitting a massive truck. What happens? The hood just crumples up, right? Well, that's pretty much what happened to the Earth's crust. This insane pressure pushed the land upwards, creating the magnificent Himalayan mountain range.
And what you end up with is this amazing contrast. On one hand, you've got the Himalayas. Geologically speaking, they're young, they're flexible, and they're still getting taller. And on the other hand, you have the Peninsular Block, this super old, really tough piece of that original Gondwana supercontinent. It's incredible, really. India is a place where something brand new is sitting right next to something incredibly ancient.
All right, so let's kick off our tour up in the north with what you could call India's majestic crown, the mountains. And right below them, its fertile heartland, the Great Plains.
You see, the Himalayas aren't just some mountains. They are, and this is a great way to think about it, a strong and long wall. This wall stands right between the Indian subcontinent and the rest of Asia, and it literally shapes everything, from the climate to the culture. Now, this giant wall does two super important things. First, it's the birthplace of India's biggest and most important rivers, the Ganga, the Indus, and the Brahmaputra. And second, it acts like a massive shield, blocking those freezing cold winds from Central Asia and helping to keep this subcontinent warm. So, you might be wondering, what happens to all that silt and sediment that those powerful Himalayan rivers wash downstream? Well, it gets dropped off right here, and over millions of years it has created the massive northern plains. So these plains, they are literally a gift from the Himalayas and the rivers that flow from them.
And we're not just talking about any old dirt here. This is super fertile alluvial soil, thousands of meters deep in some spots. And that fertility is exactly why this whole area is known as India's food ball. It supports a huge population and has really been the cultural and political heart of the country for thousands of years.
All right, let's head south. We're leaving the young mountains and plains behind and heading to the ancient, stable heart of India, the Peninsular Plateau, and its dry western edge, the Great Indian Desert. So if you look at a map, you'll see the Peninsular Plateau. It's this huge, kind of irregular triangle that covers most of southern India. Now, this place is the complete opposite of those young mountains. It's not dynamic. In fact, this is one of the oldest and most stable pieces of land on Earth, period.
The best way to think of this plateau is as India's geological anchor. It's basically this ancient, flat-topped land made of really old, hard rocks. And because it's so old, it's absolutely packed with mineral resources, things like coal, iron ore, and manganese, which are all so important for India's economy. Okay, now let's shift gears and head over to the northwest, to the vast, dry expanse of the Great Indian Desert. It also has this incredible name, Marasthali, which means land of the dead. And when you see the landscape of sand dunes and plains, you kind of get why.
Yeah, the climate is pretty harsh, with almost no rain. But here's the cool part. It's history. Geologists have found evidence, like wood fossils, that suggest this whole area used to be underwater millions of years ago. It's a really unique place, sculpted by the wind, where rivers often just disappear into the sand.
All right, for our next stop, we're heading to the very edges of India. We're going to check out its long coastlines and its two very different groups of islands, which are basically its connection to the world's oceans.
So India's two coasts are like night and day. The western coast is what we call a submerged coast. Just think of it like the land has sunk a little bit, creating these great deep water inlets that are perfect for natural ports. But the eastern coast is the opposite. It's an emergent coast, where the land has actually risen up. This gives it a wider, more gentle slope, which is perfect for big rivers to drop their sediment and form huge, fertile deltas.
Now, we can't forget the islands. India has two main groups out in the ocean. And you might think they're pretty similar just looking at a map, but nope, their origin stories are totally different.
Okay, so over in the Bay of Bengal, you've got the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. These are basically just the tips of mountains that are mostly underwater. They even have India's only active volcano. Then you hop over to the Arabian Sea, and the Lakshadweep Islands are something else entirely. They're coral islands, built up over thousands of years by tiny little sea creatures.
Wow. Okay. So we've gone from the highest peaks to the most ancient plateaus and all the way out to these tiny islands. But here's the big question, right? So what? What does all this geography actually mean for the people of India? Let's tie it all together.
See, this isn't just stuff you learn in a textbook. This geography is a living, breathing system that shapes daily life. The Himalayas, they're the country's water tower and its climate shield. Those northern plains, that's the breadbasket. The old plateau is where you find the minerals for industry, and of course, the coasts are the gateways for trade. Every single one of these features is a crucial piece of the puzzle that makes up India's climate, its economy, and its culture.
And that kind of brings us to one final thought. We've spent this whole time looking at how incredibly diverse India's physical map is. So, how do you think all of that, the mountains, the rivers, the deserts, has influenced the cultural map of India, which is just as diverse? It's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this journey.